2020 was such a weird year. We saw a global pandemic, global lockdowns that followed, and what felt like a global revolution in the streets. We were trapped inside for months and then watched our black and brown neighbors somehow still being slain. Do you feel like anything thrived more in 2020 than systemic racism? We're going to talk to some influential folks who are and have been working behind the scenes in the police reform and larger mass liberation movement. Hey everyone, I just want to say before you all see these interviews that I really set out here to make a series of conversations that really capture the behind the scenes and the mentality behind some of the shakers and movers and the police reform and mass liberation movement right now. The first person that I'm going to be speaking with is Onah Ossai. And in our conversation, we had a really great conversation. It's mostly uncut, um, completely uncensored, and Ona didn't see the questions beforehand. And as you'll see throughout all of these interviews, in my conversation with Ona, I asked these questions from the center, so not to put my own opinions and politics into this interview, and we really had a great conversation. But because it's mostly uncut and mostly uncensored, I just want to highlight that um, the questions that I asked may not necessarily um, be representative of my own personal beliefs or politics, and the answers that Ona give um, are not necessarily a representation of my beliefs or my politics, because it is mostly uncensored. I just want to capture the true conversation and the true nature of why someone like Ona works in this movement. So I hope that is informative. I hope that's insightful, and I hope that you enjoy it. And thank you so much for watching it. Well, thank you, Ona, for joining me and talking to me about police reform. I have a few questions for you. First of all, I think it's appropriate that you introduce yourself a little bit. So, Ona, who are you?
My name is Onah Ossai. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Dauphin County organizer for Capital Region Stands Up, which is a chapter of a statewide organization called PA Stands Up.
Awesome, awesome. Ona, is it true that you talked to Bernie Sanders? Is that true?
I, I have spoken with Bernie Sanders. I like to think we're friends now. I don't know if he feels that way, but yes, I have.
Awesome. Um, and well, I just want to get straight into it. I generated some of these questions from people on social media who have different questions about police reform and what's going on around our country right now. And you are at the center of that battle, the center of that um, progress. And so I wanted to ask you, why do we need to reform the police? I think that's one of the key questions that a lot of people have.
Well, Dom, I would argue we don't need to reform the police. I would argue that there is no such thing as reforming a system that's steeped in white supremacy and class war. Um, Local police departments were started as slave patrols, and state police departments were started to squash labor rebellions. And I don't think that those are systems that we can reform. I think that those are systems that we have to tear down. And I think we have to find different means to get restorative justice.
Awesome. I guess the question that would follow from that is, what does restorative justice mean to you?
So restorative justice and transformative justice really is just a way of imagining how we deal with when we have a crime. If someone is murdered, um, arresting someone, taking them to jail, punishing them in the way that we do, it doesn't help anybody really. It doesn't help the person who committed the murder, who a well person does not kill, and it doesn't help the victims or the victim's family. So When we think about restorative justice, we're really thinking about ways of finding justice that can heal both the perpetrator and the people who had a crime perpetrated against them, to have some type of collective healing.
Yeah, I hear that, and I think that a question that a lot of people might have about that is, does restorative justice necessarily mean defund?
So restorative justice and the way we're thinking about justice is one part of an abolitionist or a mass liberation framework. When we talk about defunding the police, what we're really saying is that we are spending sometimes in some localities one out of every five, one out of every $4 of local money on police departments that are supplying people with guns and vests and tasers and pepper spray, when in fact we could actually be funding community care that would prevent crime in a way that addresses the root causes of crime, right? We know that poverty is a big driver of crime. We know that mental health is a big driver of crime. We know that drug and alcohol abuse are a big driver of crime. And we know that just spending money on police officers who come after a crime is committed doesn't prevent crime. We know that what prevents crime is putting resources back into communities to prevent the things that cause people to commit. It's about being proactive versus being reactive.
And so, do you think that a more appropriate way to summarize those efforts would be to say that it's a reallotment of funding?
If you want to call it whatever you want to call it, you can feel free. I'm calling it defund the police because that's what I mean. We have defunded our education. We've defunded social services. We've defunded all of these things, right? But all of a
Right.
sudden, when it comes to the police, it's a dirty word. So we're defunding the tone police as well. You can call it whatever you'd like to call it. But at the end of the day, it's defunding. So,
Okay, but to be fair, some people could still accurately call it reallotment, and it would be the same thing that you're talking about.
sure, why not? There's
I,
many
I,
words for many things.
I understand. So, what would you say to someone like former President Obama, who says that using terms like defund divide us? You have a response to that?
I would say that when people like former President Obama, who have a big platform, say that they're causing that divide. So I absolutely believe that former President Obama should stop tone policing people and should allow people to say what they mean. And defunding the police is what we mean. And I think that it would serve us better as a people if he didn't gatekeep the way that abolitionists and primarily women of color are speaking about an issue that affects us. I think that he should, you know, he wants to call it whatever he wants. That's fine. I'm not going to stop him, but he shouldn't stop us.
I totally appreciate your answer there. Ona, another question that I have, it seems to follow naturally. If this money is leaving the police department, then where does it go?
So every community is different. There are communities that are dealing with massive homelessness problems. And for those communities, sometimes it could go to housing folks, feeding folks, things of that nature. There are communities that are dealing with an education gap. In those communities, could that money could go to more education, whether it be pre-K, after-school programs for youth, whether or not those communities actually directly fund their schools. Um, those are places that it could go. It could go to social services. It could go to mental health professionals. It could go to substance abuse professionals if you're living in an area that has like a high level of opioid addiction that's driving crime. Because we know that opioid addicts have to steal and commit crimes to foster these habits. So, um, if the money is spent on those things, crime will start to go down. So it really is a local decision. This is why local politics is so important. Know what your community needs and know how you can get that funding to the services that your community needs, and that's where the money should go.
Awesome. Um, and so following that path, um, if you are taking that money and putting it into other spaces, um, have you seen this be successful elsewhere? Have you seen this be successful in your own community?
So we haven't defunded the police in my own community yet. It's something that we hope to do in the future. But we have seen successful models. We've seen, particularly in Eugene, Oregon, a very successful model of cahoots, where they have a homelessness problem. And they've been tackling it since the 70s by just diverting funds and resources to social workers, to drug and alcohol counselors, and to people who know how to deal with homelessness, which is their number one issue in Oregon. And I think it's beneficial for the communities. I would also note that here in Pennsylvania, like 35 or something towns have already abolished their police departments. Forget about defunding them. They've completely abolished them. And the reason no one talks about it is because they're white towns, right? And no one says anything. And crime didn't go up. Not it's not there's not more crime. There's not more criminals because there are no police. It's just simply they just don't have any police. And so, because those communities decided that to fund the things that they needed for their communities, they could no longer afford to fund that police department.
And so I'm not this is like a beach ball. Like this is like if you're confident in this stance here, then this should be a meatball of a question. I'm gonna throw it out there. If if you're getting rid of the police in these communities and you've seen these happen in these other communities, some people might argue that these communities were already safe, and so the police department isn't necessarily needed as much. What about somewhere that isn't safe, like let's say Chicago or a Baltimore or a Philadelphia? Wouldn't the police be needed in those communities more?
I mean, I've never been to Chicago outside of the airport, so I don't want to speak on a city I've never been to. And I know a lot of people, that's no offense, but that's what white people do, is talk about Chicago when they want to talk about police reform. I will specifically speak to Philadelphia, a city I've spent a lot of time in. And I can tell you that Philadelphia cops are not out there stopping crimes, right? I can tell you a personal story that I accidentally hit a pedestrian on a rainy day in Philadelphia, and a cop showed up and just yelled at the man that got hit on the ground and was, like, you shouldn't have been walking here and all this stuff. He didn't prevent anything. He didn't solve anything. He was just sitting there on duty, just watching shit happen. I really would argue that in Philadelphia, defunding the police. When you look at where the police are, you got police on Drexel's campus, you got police on Temple's campus, on Penn's campus. But that's where the policing money is going, is to protect these white students, right? These class structures that we already have in place, right? So no, I would argue that you could defund Philadelphia's police department and provide more community safety to fix the other things that I see when I'm in Philadelphia, which is I see parents digging through trash to find stuff for their kids because they have no money, right? That should not happen in a society where we have money for cops who just yell at pedestrians who got hit by a car,
Yeah.
right? So I think we absolutely could take some money away from those police forces and put it to those starving people of Philadelphia, not the Penn students who are going to go home or go get a highfalutin job when they graduate. Let's start actually taking care of the people who live here. They've been here, they're staying here, their family's going to be here, and make sure that they can live a proper life.
Thank you, Ona. And a question that I wanted to transition us towards is what is the next steps? In 2020, we saw people take the streets. We saw people organize in mass, like we've never seen before, or like we haven't seen in a long time, at least. Um, what comes next in 2021 as we roll into this new year?
Well, to be honest, it's still a lot of organizing. In the street, organizing is very good. It draws attention. It brings people's, eyes and ears to the issues at hand that we want to focus on. And I think that it should never be negating the what that public pressure can put on, but there also has to be behind the scenes things. One of the biggest things is the first things is budget fights, right? Identifying in local budgets where your municipalities are spending, how much are they spending on the police, how much are they trying to add, And then where are they lacking in funding? For example, we found out that Harrisburg had not one line in next year's budget for COVID-19 relief, right? Not one line in the budget, but almost 3 million additional dollars for police department, right? And in a city that's in poverty, where there's thousands of people who have already been evicted and on the street, the homeless shelters are at capacity and can't take anybody else. This just doesn't make sense. So the first thing is just getting involved locally and finding out where are they actually spending this money, like, and where are they not spending money where they could be. Um, and I think that's a really big part. And then I think another big part of it is thinking about one of the hardest things we have to ask ourselves is, what do we want justice to look like, right? Like, when there is a murder or a rape or a kidnapping or something of this nature, like, what do we want justice to look like? What would make us feel good, but would actually change the landscape and the harm that's been done to everyone from those crimes. And I think that's something that we all have to do introspectively before we can really start pushing for the world that we want.
That was an outstanding answer. Are you running for governor?
I've not announced yet, Dom, but thank you for the suggestion.
No, seriously, that sounds like that sounds like a campaign platform right there. I mean, that's a really great answer. I think that America definitely should think about what it wants its justice system to look like, because surely something that we can all agree on is that we all don't agree on whatever we're doing right now. Um, and so to close us off, one thing I think that we need to clear the air on for sure is, did we coordinate this sweater and beanie look? Like, did this happen by accident or did we coordinate this?
So we didn't coordinate officially, but we should preface this. This is one day after we've gotten our special powers from the solstice. So there was a little bit of that happening. I felt, telepathically you were sending me messages about a sweater
Yeah,
and a hat, a beanie, and so I think it happened naturally through the powers that we gained on the solstice yesterday.
I was disappointed. I woke up and I was just like, Twitter let me down again. But
I'm
yeah,
not gonna lie, Dom. We're still recording, but I tried to go Super Saiyan yesterday morning when I woke up, and I'm like, oh man, nothing happened.
just for the
Nothing
record, this
happened.
is a Rick and Morty sweater here. I think that people should respect this